Confirmed the election, but President-elect Donald Trump is still talking about his legitimacy. He tweeted this morning about former President Bill Clinton and what Hillary Clinton's campaign did to lose the election. Joining us now, CNN political analyst David Gregory with the bottom line. The irony that the president-elect keeps feeding this perception of the illegitimacy of his election when he hates that perception to begin with. How do you see it?
It doesn't make any sense. Look, the issues aren't going away, Chris, as you alluded to in your interview with the congressman just there. And the more that it appears that Trump and his team are just trying to dismiss these allegations of tampering with the election by the Russians, the worse it's going to get. Why doesn't the president-elect say, look, I'm going to be the president. This is not about whether it determined the election, but this is a very serious matter, both for me, for future presidents, for future elections. If I'm running for re-election, we got to get to the bottom of this. That's the responsible thing to do. That's the confident thing to do. I don't know why he wouldn't be confident he's going to be the 45th president.
Well, it's because he doesn't like when people take shots at him. I mean, He's been very clear about this. He calls himself a counterpuncher. So Bill Clinton was an elector yesterday. He cast his vote, not surprisingly, for Hillary Clinton. And he came out and he was caught by a reporter who asked him, you know, how do you explain what happened? First, he gave his explanation of what went wrong for Hillary Clinton. So let's listen to that moment first.
I've never cast a vote I was prouder of. You know, I watched her work for 2 years. I watched her battle through that bogus email deal. She fought through that. She fought through everything. And she prevailed against it all. But, you know, then at the end we had the Russians and the FBI deal, but she couldn't prevail against that. But she did everything else and still won by 2.8 million votes.
Okay, so that's his take on what went wrong. And then in a print interview, former President Clinton said this about Donald Trump. He doesn't know much. One thing he does know is how to get angry white men to vote for him. So that is what Mr. Trump is responding to in these tweets where he says, I'll put them up, Bill Clinton stated that I called him after the election. Wrong. He called me with a very nice congratulations. He doesn't know much. Now he's switching this on to Bill Clinton, especially how to get people, even with an unlimited budget, out to vote in the vital swing states and more. They focused on the wrong states. David?
Yeah. Well, Trump is right about that. And look, Bill Clinton is a former president, so should have chosen his words more carefully, thinking about the presidency and the importance of the institution. But he's also the spouse of the candidate. So, yeah, there's some sour grapes. There's a lot of anger and disappointment, and there's a lot of factors to look at about why Hillary Clinton lost, including Jim Comey's actions, including the leaked emails, including their strategic and tactical decisions within the Clinton campaign, all of these things, and the fact that Donald Trump was able to turn out all these voters. So there's going to be a lot of recriminations and a lot of sour grapes, and I think you see all of that playing out. But I don't think we're going to get a different Trump, right? I mean, President Trump is not going to be different, and he's going to use Twitter as a personal arm of his communications to directly speak to his people, to tweak the media, to tweak anyone who comes in his path. I think this is a pattern that we're going to see. The real question is how it impacts policies, how it impacts relationships that go beyond internal domestic political infighting.
Seems that the challenge to put his personal agenda aside and start focusing on the people who elected him. And in that way, what he's saying this morning about these attacks abroad is creating a lot of controversy. The Germans aren't sure, but if they're right about who they think they have, which is this refugee who drove this truck into the Christmas market, and then you have Turkey, Syria, and secular concerns about Russia's role in Syria. He lumped them all together, Trump, saying they're all Islamic terror. What's the risk?
Well, I mean, it's the same risk that you always see, which is he's generalizing, he's creating kind of a war against Islam generally, but I think you would argue that's not, in effect, what he's trying to do. I think the real issue here is Syria, the destruction of Syria, the role that the Russians are playing, what is our relationship going forward with the Russians to try to stem that tide, and the refugee crisis. I mean, the crimes against humanity here that have pushed people out of their homes, what are they left with throughout that region? region and across Europe, and what are the potential dangers. And Angela Merkel in Germany, who's up for election in 2017, who's had an open-door policy to asylum seekers, this is a real problem for her politically and really morally, as she's been trying to do the right thing.
All right, David Gregory, thanks so much for the bottom line. See you soon. Well, First Lady Michelle Obama sitting down with Oprah Winfrey. What advice would Mrs. Obama give to her successor? The revealing interview next.
Now, there's been some back and forth going on about a phone call that occurred on election night. Now, initially, Bill Clinton, former President Bill Clinton, suggested that Donald Trump had called him. Mr. Trump tweeted today, no, you got it wrong. He called me. Now, you have some intimate knowledge of this.
Oh, I do. Actually, it was the president-elect is correct. On Thursday, November 10th, which basically was a day after the wee hours of November 9th when he won, and that Hillary Clinton called to concede and congratulate him, I received a call from President Bill Clinton's chief of staff who asked if we could arrange a call to have President Bill Clinton congratulate the president-elect. The president-elect was in Washington, D.C. meeting with the current president on November 10th, that Thursday, as we'll all recall. And so we arranged the call. They had a great conversation. But it did go that way, and I saw in a tweet tonight that President Bill Clinton did say, Donald Trump and I agree on one thing, I did call him. It's fine. It may seem like a minor point to some, but it shows you the power of Donald Trump in his Twitter feed when he says, nope, I'm going to correct the record right here. You actually called me, which is true. I just think they're war of the word. It's not really a war of the words. It's a departure in facts when it comes to what just happened in this election. I mean, Bill Clinton won the presidency twice because he knew how to win those important blue states in the upper Midwest and other places. His wife failed to do that, and she failed to do that not because Vladimir Putin them to ignore Milwaukee, but because for some reason they took for granted Wisconsin because it had gone blue in every election since 1984. And so I think Bill Clinton, who knows politics so well, who is clearly the more gifted, masterful politician in his two-person household, he should know better than to be blaming Russian hacking or Jim Comey or Bernie Sanders, how dare he run in a primary. I mean, we're not enough of these excuses.
He went even further than Jim Comey. He did. He blamed the, what do you call it, the fake email scandal. Then he blamed Jim Comey. In this same comment where he said that Donald Trump had called him, in that same comment, he said Donald Trump knows how to get angry white males to vote for him.
Well, that's not the only group that, first of all, it's an insult, and I think Bill Clinton sounds like, in that case, a Trump voter these days. He seems pretty angry, white male, and that's too bad, because he's a former president. We have enormous respect for him and for his legacy, as it were. But we also have to point out that Donald Trump had a very broad coalition in this win. He ran the tables among the same kind of Democratic Union households that Bill Clinton won and Hillary Clinton lost. He ran the tables among rural voters. Frankly, he got almost as much as Mitt Romney got among women, and he ran against the first female president. I would ask the Clintons, why didn't Hillary Clinton get 60 or 62% of the female vote? What's wrong with her running as the first female president? Why did she have this wicked gender gap among men where they disliked her, dismissed her, didn't want her to be president of the United States or commander-in-chief? They just trusted her. I mean, she underperformed among millennials. She couldn't bring together the Obama coalition, and she certainly couldn't bring together the Bill Clinton coalition.
So
it's pretty simple.
Those comments I would call deplorable and irredeemable by Bill Clinton. Is that okay to do that?
I would call them, yeah, it's something like that. But I would just call them dead wrong, and it's time to do, look, it's time for the Clintons to do what the Obamas have done, which is to open up the door and say, we are here to help you have a peaceful transition in our great democracy. We're only 1 month away today, Eric, from January 20th. And it's really time for the Clintons to tell all of their adherents, their protesters, this fanciful electoral strategy which failed, the hashtag. It's time for them to tell everybody to support this guy.
Top of the hour, 7 p.m. Eastern. You're in the CNN Newsroom. I'm Poppy Harlow in New York tonight. New details on President-elect Donald Trump's leading candidate for Secretary of State, ExxonMobil CEO Rex Tillerson. The two men met today, and sources tell our John King the oil company executive told Trump he'd be honored to become the nation's top diplomat. Also, those sources telling John King that Tillerson left the meeting today believing that he will be offered the job. We're told no official announcement on who Trump has chosen will happen until the middle of next week. But the president-elect praised Tillerson during this new interview with Fox News.
Let me ask you about Rex Tillerson, okay? Head of ExxonMobil. Why does a business executive make sense as the chief diplomat?
Well, in his case, he's much more than a business executive. I mean, he's a world-class player. He's in charge of, I guess, the largest company in the world. He's in charge of an oil company that's pretty much double the size of his next nearest competitor. It's been a company that's been unbelievably managed. And to me, a great advantage is he knows many of the players. And he knows them well. He does massive deals in Russia. He does massive deals for the company, not for himself, for the company.
This is at least one prominent Republican senator is worried about Tillerson's relationship with Russia and Russia's President Vladimir Putin. Ryan Nobles has more for us tonight. Ryan?
Poppy, some of those key characteristics about ExxonMobil CEO Rex Tillerson that Donald Trump views as positives are things that have leading Republican John McCain concerned. I caught up with McCain as he was heading into today's Army-Navy game, and he said that he wants answers about Tillerson's connection to the Russian government.
I have obviously concerns of reports of his relationship with Vladimir Putin, who is a thug and a murderer, and we will have hearings, and that issue and other issues concerning him will be examined, and then that's the time to make up your mind as to whether to vote yes or no.
So what kind of questions would you ask Rex Tillerson that would make you feel comfortable about him in a role like that?
It's his view of Vladimir Putin and his role in the world, and for example, the fact that Boris Nemtsov, who was the leader of the opposition, was murdered on the orders, I believe, of Vladimir Putin in the shadow of the Kremlin.
And Tillerson's ties to the Russian government are well known. He is close friends with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and he helped to negotiate a deal with ExxonMobil and the largest oil company in Russia, a company in which the Russian government is its largest investor. And while Republicans do control the United States Senate, their margin is only 4 votes. And if there are other moderate Republicans like John McCain who have concerns about Tillerson's appointment, it could make for a rocky confirmation. Poppy?
Ryan will be watching. We'll see when the news of Secretary of State comes. Thank you very much for that tonight. All of this is happening as Trump's transition team slams the CIA over reports that the agency believes Russian hackers meddled in the U.S. election specifically to try to help Donald Trump win. To be clear, intelligence officials are not saying there is any evidence that Russia did help Trump win, but rather evidence they actively tried to do that. Trump's transition team released a statement last night that reads in full, "These are the same people that said Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. The election ended a long time ago in one of the biggest electoral college victories in history. It's now time to move on and to make America great again." The CIA, for its part, not commenting. The Kremlin is, though. CNN senior international correspondent Matthew Chance is in Moscow and joins me now live. Matthew, how are the Kremlin, the Russian people, the Russian media all responding to this?
Well, I mean, this is not necessarily a new allegation. You've got to remember, Poppy, from a Russian point of view. I mean, for months now, this allegation has been circulating that the Russians have been actively intervening in the U.S. presidential election race on behalf of one candidate, Donald Trump, and against the other candidate, Hillary Clinton. And so when they've been confronted with these new reports, these new CIA, apparently revelations as well, they've just come out with their same old denial, saying that, look, we did no hacking, this is just basically slander aimed at discrediting the Russian state. And so it's been a categorical denial on the part of the Kremlin when it comes to these allegations and the earlier allegations as well.
And Matthew, when you look at Rex Tillerson, we've all seen this photo by now of the two of the men together. We know that Rex Tillerson obviously inked a big deal for ExxonMobil with Russia. Back in 2011, he received an award from Russia just a few years ago. I mean, what more can you tell us about the relationship between these two men?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure about the closeness of that personal friendship, but obviously their relationship goes back, I think, till at least 1999 when Putin emerged here in Russia on the political stage. Of course, Rex Tillerson has been at the head for the past decade of ExxonMobil, and he's done some astonishingly large deals with the Russian state. I mean, the deal that he did in 2011 to explore oil reserves in the Arctic is estimated to be worth $500 billion, $500 billion. And so, these are enormously large deals. A reflection of that was that Putin in 2012 awarded him the Order of Friendship, which is one of Russia's highest civilian honors. It's a medal, and it shows that, they're very close indeed. Tillerson has also spoken out, crucially, against sanctions in Russia, and that may be, essential in understanding his tenure of Secretary of State if he gets that position.
That's a really good point. Comments he made not long ago, really just back in 2014. Matthew Chan's live for us in Moscow. I appreciate the reporting tonight. Thank you so much. Let's go now to Buck Sexton. Buck is a former CIA counterterrorism analyst. He's also a conservative, and he hosts the Buck Sexton radio show on The Blaze. Thank you for being with me.
Thanks, Poppy.
Let's dive into this. This is exactly in your lane regarding the CIA. As someone who formerly worked with the agency, you know it well. You know the mission is intelligence. The mission is not a political mission. Does Trump's attack on the veracity of the intelligence findings bother you, even as someone who's a conservative who voted for him?
No, I think it shows that he's irritated with what are clearly leaks. They haven't actually come out and said. The agency has no official comment on this whatsoever.
In the statement, he actually went against, he attacked them on their biggest, intelligence failure with WMD.
I understand that. I'm saying he is reacting with irritation to what are clearly leaks from within the agency meant to undermine him before he even takes office. So I don't think it's fair for him to impugn the entirety of the agency, but I also think that it's not right for people who are coming out and speaking to reporters and saying that, by the way, this is not a universal assessment. People have this understanding, which is wrong oftentimes, who haven't worked in the agency, that there will be one point of view that's held by the entirety of everyone at Langley.
Right.
It's not true at all. There are a lot of people that have different points of view within Langley, and that is often reflected in the analytic product that goes all the way up to the White House, all the way up to the Oval Office. And so for a few people to speak to reporters and say, well, we're pretty sure that Russia intervened on behalf of Trump, and they're not named, and the CIA is not commenting, it's irritating to the Trump administration, or the soon-to-be Trump administration. I can understand that. I wish he wouldn't react in the way that he did, but he's Donald Trump.
They said, if you read the full, which you did, the Washington Post report, they say more than we think. They said the evidence we've collected shows...
Well, who's we?
Who are the sources?
Yeah, I mean,
right, exactly. They're unnamed sources.
Right, that's the problem.
Okay, but come on. We all do our job as journalists, and we don't use fake sources.
Well, no, but the people that they're speaking to inside of the intelligence community may not be representative of the entirety of what the information is.
And they note that in the report, but I want to get...
They do note that in the report, which is why it's, again, annoying to the Trump people in the Trump campaign, in the Trump transition, I should say. I'm getting used to these things.
As someone who was within the agency then, and you're hearing this from your soon-to-be boss's boss. How do you react?
I think it's not great for morale. I'm sure there's some people who are going to see this and think, well, that's not really fair. First of all, there are a lot of people who will see, I think, Trump tweeting this and realize that within a week, he won't even remember that he did this. This is just sort of part of what we're getting with the new president of the United States.
Does that bother you?
He says things. I think it's not the way I would do things, but he also just won an election against incredible odds and a woman who had twice as much money raised and the entirety of the media, with a few exceptions, behind her. So I do think that he should be given some deference before he's actually taken day one in office. And it is not, I do not think it is professional for someone in the intel community to be speaking to reporters specifically to undermine the president-elect of the United States on this issue. So his response to it is much less annoying to me than that leak in the first place.
Levels of annoying.
Levels of annoying.
Before I let you go, at the end of this statement, the Trump team says it's now time to move on. Is it time to move on, or is it time to dig in as the next president and figure out who in Russia is doing what and to what effect?
Well, certainly the idea of, or the reality of Russia interfering in our elections is something that should be a bipartisan point of concern. And I think that it is, but there's a difference between this is something that Russia should not be doing and there should be some sort of a diplomatic approach to them on this and saying don't do this. I know, I can't speak for Donald Trump, but I'm just saying this is what I think should happen now in response to what Russia did. But there's also this entire narrative that something happened in this election, that all these different things came together, whether it was the FBI director or fake news or Russian interference, and that's why Hillary Clinton lost. And people need to move beyond that. It's getting to the point now where it's childish. Should Russia be allowed to hack it? No. But also, what are we going to do? We're going to sanction Russia because there are a few people on Russian soil who hack us and say that they had, and the Russian government has no idea. It's very complicated.
You're saying the Kremlin has no idea the hacking goes on.
I don't know what the Kremlin knows about the hacking.
Okay, I don't know. time for more on this. But I think you should come back.
Does Putin, to somebody who is a few levels below Putin, and also, by the way, how much are we willing to do in response?
But that's exactly what we need to find out, right? And so
that's a legitimate discussion.
Okay.
But this turn the election, or let's pretend to turn the election, I think is much more problematic.
I have to leave it there, Buck. Thank you.
Thank you,
nice to have you on. Coming up, Donald Trump's not in the White House yet, but as we just debated, he is locking horns with the CIA. What lies ahead for the president-elect's relationship within the agency? We're going to keep diving in on that straight ahead. You're live in the CNN Newsroom.